what I would say to that is you need to challenge the conventional definition of success. So what do you determine is successful? I think that's another good thing for you to think about as you try and simplify your life is what is success to you? Right now I'm reading this pretty interesting book. It's called The Scarcity Mind, and it's all about how our brains are wired to always crave more in whatever aspect that is. And he talks at the very beginning of the book about how our brains are wired for survival. And so in times of famine or, if winter was coming, we'd always try and stock up, right? Stockpile and make sure that we're ready for whatever is coming. And he talks about how now, because like we have resources that are so widely available to us, it's kind of difficult to prep like that, right? It's hard to have, we don't need to necessarily stockpile food for the wintertime or get so many different resources that we are ready for whatever that is. Although I do think it's smart to always have like a little preparation kit. That should never be our focus, right? We should never be trying to focus on the things that we don't have and then try and go after them like crazy. And he makes the point to now, it's like, well, because we don't have to worry about, prepping for the wintertime or all these different problems that our old hunter-gatherer ancestors used to face, which our brains are still wired that way. He's like, now that's kind of trickled into our professional lives, our personal lives, and really everything else. And it's interesting. So in the book, the kind of in the very beginning, he says this quote. It's kind of long, so bear with me here. But he says, restaurant portion sizes are 4 times larger compared with 1950. Everything from our cars to refrigerators to microwaves to coffee makers is larger and packed with techie smart features. Like, why does my dishwasher need to connect to the cloud? Incoming university presidents are nearly 10 times more likely to add new programs than they are to subtract programs that aren't working. Yes, and is the rule of improv comedy, and the phrase has been adopted as a line by the business community. Entire industries like academia and medicine have experienced a 44% ballooning of professional administrators since the early 2000s. We create and consume 90 times more data and information today than we did just 15 years ago. High-level employees spend an average of 130% more time in meetings today than they did in 1960s. I'll stop. There's a lot to that quote. And if you're in the professional world, you know that you're probably spending more time in meetings than you need to be, right? Or to his point, it's like, why does my dishwasher need to connect to the cloud? It's just supposed to wash dishes. Am I sending tweets? Am I going to be posting from Instagram or watching YouTube videos on my dishwasher? And let's not even talk about the restaurant portions that are 4 times bigger than they used to be in the 1950s. Take a look around, the people who just walk by you, and you could probably see that there's some validity to that. But the whole point is like, because we have things so readily available to us, we try and overcomplicate our lives. And one other example from the book that he talks about is he gives this example that this engineering professor is getting this almost like little lab ready for his students. And the professor sits down with his kid and they're building like a Lego bridge. And so they're adding more blocks to it. They're trying to make it more sturdy. And they get to the point to where the bridge is on 4 columns and they run out of bricks. And so the professor's like, oh, dang it, we're out of bricks. I'm going to have to go find some more in this box of Legos and see which ones that we can add to it and maybe just keep the bridge level and all that. While he's doing that, while he's searching for these bricks, his son has already taken away bricks and made the bridge level and actually more sturdy, because when you take a bridge down and you put it more close to the ground, it's going to be more sturdy. It's not going to wiggle, right? It's not going to be pushed by the wind. And so the professor's like, well, that's probably the right call there. You're a smart guy, little kid. And so he takes this to his class and everyone joins in and they're all doing the same thing that the professor was doing. They're all trying to add as many bricks as possible. And keep in mind that the professor gave everyone a budget. He said, you have X amount of dollars to spend and each brick is going to be a currency. And so all these students, every single one of them tried to add more to the bridge. They used all their budget and they tried to make this bridge as sturdy as possible, as big as possible, but none of them thought to reduce the amount of bricks and save their budget. But the entire point of that story is they actually had more resources when they were finished. The bridge was more sturdy, but it's because they had less. And because our lives are so, I wouldn't say easy, I don't think that's the right word, but we have so many resources readily available to us, we try and overcomplicate things. We think that resources are so scarce. We think that, we're not going to have enough to do whatever we want to do, right? He gives this other quote from Robert Sapolsky, and he says, if we were designed by engineers, as we consumed more, we would desire less. But our frequent human tragedy is that the more we consume, the hungrier we get, more and faster and stronger. What was an unexpected pleasure yesterday is what we feel entitled to today, and what won't be enough tomorrow. And there's a lot of examples that you can look in everyday lives. Like our cars are way faster than they were 20 years ago. They're more efficient than they were 20 years ago. That's good. I mean, innovation is important, but we always try and overcomplicate our lives. And I think there is a almost misconception of what productivity means. There's people, and I'm guilty of this at times, but there's people who are like, okay, the more I have on my plate, that means I'm doing more and I'm accomplishing more, right? But I think there's some negativity to that. When we overcomplicate our lives, we lose the ability to live in the moment and to actually focus on the things that matter most. And so let's say, you have so many different options in front of you. How do you know what to focus on? How do you know where to direct your energy and attention? Because I think these are all questions you should be asking yourself. But how do you determine the one thing that you should commit to doing? That's a heavy question. How do you do that? Because we have so many options in front of us, it's really hard to simplify our lives and focus on the things that do matter most. But it's important. And if you try some of the things that we talk about today, I can almost guarantee you'll see a little boost of productivity in yourself. You'll focus on efficiency. You'll focus on quality over quantity. And ultimately, the goal is to reduce your own stress and not let you burn out. We don't want you to burn out. We want you to get after it. And so James Clear, who's the author of Atomic Habits, he said this quote, and I think it's kind of interesting as we delve into some of these other topics. But he says, simplify. What can be done in 3 steps should never be done in 4. Each link in the chain is a potential breaking point. Fewer links mean fewer chances of failure. So if you try and overcomplicate your life, or you don't try, it just happens naturally. But if you overcomplicate your life and you try adding so many different things to your plate, then you have more chances for failure. You have more chances to mess up and not accomplish the things that you want to. You might still be productive, but there's a lot more that you could be doing. And so we'll talk about some tips that I think are interesting just to go over and maybe give you some ideas on how you can do this for yourself. But I want to talk first on focus, like what your focus should be on, and productivity, because I think those two tie into each other pretty well. But concentration. So that's a big one, right? What do you concentrate your time on? What are you focused most on? Are you spending time trying to accomplish so many different things that you lose sight of what's actually in front of you and what needs your attention? So when you do less, you can concentrate better at the tasks at hand. This often leads to higher work quality and greater productivity. And so with that in mind, my challenge to you with this would just be to sit down and write 3 goals that you have. Think about your professional goals, your family goals, your fitness goals, anything that you want. But just write down 3 and then think about what can you be doing every single day to incrementally get better at those and ultimately reach it. You might have to set some other things aside, some other priorities aside. You might have to figure out, I want to grow my social media, but I also want to have good relationships with my family. And so you might have to ask yourself some of those types of questions to really emphasize this point. But now that you've, sat down, you wrote down your 3 goals, you're going to have to put in a lot of reps. And so what I mean by that is you're going to have to just keep doing what you're doing, whether that's like if you want to run a marathon, you're going to have to run a lot, right? You're going to have to put those reps in. You're going to have to figure out, okay, well, I don't know too much about marathon running, but I got to at least start. And so once you start, then you can be like, okay, well, this run didn't go as well as I wanted it to. I could have done X, Y, and Z better. I could have fueled maybe a little bit better. But what this is going to do is the more that you do like towards one certain goal, like if you try and just focus on one certain goal, you can start to simplify because you can eliminate the things that don't work, right? Or don't help you to progress towards that goal. And so you can trim away the fat because now you know what's essential and what's unnecessarily in order to reach that. At this stage, your best option is to decide. So you can't try everything. At some point, you don't need more information. You just need to make a choice on what you want to focus on. And so that brings in efficiency. So I think modern work culture often equates busyness with productivity. But again, it is a misconception. Efficiency is about doing the right things, not doing more things. And once you figure out that decision that you want to focus your time on, or whatever that goal is, then you can start to become more efficient by doing less. Again, it's going to be prioritization. And that comes into the second point I want to talk about, which is quality over quantity. And this podcast is a great example over quality over quantity. When I first initially started this, I was like, okay, I'm going to try and get 3 episodes a week because I heard one of my favorite podcasters, Chris Williamson. He's like, when I first started, I was doing 3 episodes a week because that's what I knew I needed to do. And so I was like, okay, I can probably do that. I could do 3 episodes a week. And I did it a couple times. I did it, I think, for about 2 weeks. But one thing that I realized is like the quality that was coming out of my podcast was like, what are you even saying, Brett? Like, what is this? What are you talking about? Like, it didn't really have a point. And it was just the most like high level podcast episodes that I think I've done to this point. Like they were just regurgitations of things that I would hear. And so I would talk about one thing and then, record another episode. But in my head, I was like, okay, well, I'm updating 3 a week. I'm getting these out there. And so it's just a time thing, right? But unfortunately, I realized quickly that the quality of my podcast was dropping. And for me, I was like, okay, well, let me take a step back here because I don't want to put anything out that I'm not passionate about or that I don't agree with. And if I'm just trying to get 3 episodes a week and I'm focusing on that number, then most likely the quality is going to suffer a little bit. And so to that, I would just say, welcome to the grind. It's time to put in that volume of work, and not just once or twice, not just when it's easy, but when you're consistent, you repeat that volume of work. You have to fall in love with boredom and stay on the bus. And sometimes that might be like what I was saying. I'd rather be a little bit more bored prepping one podcast and doing some research and focusing my time on that than doing 3 that are just very high level, because I want to provide value to the audience, right? That was my entire goal when I wanted to start this. I've talked about it before, but one of the goals of the podcast is it's almost like a reflection on things that I wish I would have known when I was younger to help me become who I am today. And so with that in mind, it's like, okay, well, I really want to spend time talking about these certain topics so people can gain motivation or feel accomplished for themselves and try things that they're nervous about. And so ever since I made that switch, I focused on what was truly important to me. And this led to more meaningful work, more focused work, and more intentional work. Like this episode of the podcast, I've spent time spent time researching different talking points, different quotes, different stories that I can share, right? And the ultimate goal of that is to have the listeners be like, okay, well, I actually gained something from that. And when I was first starting, I didn't think my listeners were. And so that's something else I would challenge you guys to do is focus on where you wish there was more quality in your goals, whether that be fitness, family, professional, anything. Then you can start to focus on the important things in life. And I always talk about fitness goals, but I think weight loss is an easy one that anyone can kind of relate to. Everyone's wanted to lose a few pounds every time or every once in a while. But let's say you want to lose 20 pounds and you still like, eating out with your friends and you like doing all these different things. But if that is your goal, then you need to simplify your life and be like, okay, well, I know I have this tendency to come home and just make whatever is in the fridge, or I just like to snack at work. And that might still be true. Like if you like to snack at work, then take healthier snacks to work. Simplify that. As long as you're still eating and you're still snacking, then I think that's a win-win. And the example of like coming home and just wanting to cook whatever's in the fridge, maybe it's leftover pizza from the night before, you got some spaghetti in there. But if that doesn't align with your goals, maybe you should spend some time on Sunday meal prepping for the week, or just make healthier choices when you're grocery shopping. So then if you do come home and you're like, I'm going to cook whatever's in the fridge, it's going to be healthy. That's one thing I would say is like the quality of your decisions changes the quality of your work. It sounds very easy, but it's not. It's going to take some time. And like I said, like, welcome to the grind. Like, you have to put in the different reps to figure out what you can not focus on, what's essential and what's unnecessary. But the ultimate goal of this is to really help reduce your own stress and your own burnout. Now, your well-being is very important. I'm struggling a little bit with some mental health stuff right now, but that's, I think, probably because I have a tendency to overcomplicate my life. And so I've been doing a lot of this self-reflection on how can I reduce my stress? How can I reduce my burnout? How can I focus on the important things and give all my power, like my willpower, to those, and eliminate the other things that I'm not necessarily focused on at the moment. Constantly being busy can lead to stress and burnout, but doing less allows for rest and recuperation, contributing to better mental health. And I read this LinkedIn post, like a few days ago, but the entire point was this guy was like, you know what? Sick days aren't just for being sick. Like if you need a time to just relax a little bit, focus on yourself, take time to do something that you want to do, go see a movie, go get a massage, go take your kids out to the lake, whatever that might look like for you in terms of a recharge day, then, use those sick days, because your mental health, like if you're not in a good mental space, you're not going to be able to focus on these goals that you want to accomplish as well as you'd like to. And it's easier said than done. I know that, but the importance of work-life balance is, I think, very critical to your success. You need to figure out times when you're like, you know what? I've been sitting at my computer for 25 minutes, just kind of stuck, don't have any ideas, don't know where to go from here. I can't make any more work on this project. Then get up off your desk, go for a little walk, recharge your brain a little bit, and maybe in 30 minutes, you'll come back ready to rock, because you'll have that time to decompress. And it's really important to do that. There's lots of ways I think many people have their own self-help routines or whatever that is. One thing that I would say with this is, like with running, I've mentioned this on this podcast lots, but I have this goal to run a sub-3 marathon in February. And a couple weeks ago, I was feeling a little frazzled with that. I was like, I really don't know what I'm doing with my nutrition. I don't know what I'm doing with my rest and recovery. I don't know how many miles I'm supposed to be running every single week. And so I was overcomplicating my life because I was doing so much time researching what other people have done in the past. Like one of my favorite podcasters, Nick Bear, like studying his routine because he's a crazy runner. And I would just overcomplicate myself because I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna have to try all these different diet plans. I'm gonna have to try, LeBron James's rest and recovery routine, or or all these different things. And one day I was like, you know what? Maybe I should just hire a coach. And so 2 weeks ago, I did. I hired a coach. I hired a marathon coach, and I talked to her, and I was telling her my goals. I was telling her the things I was trying to get done in about 4 months' time. I think that's when the race is. And she pretty much took everything I told her and created a plan for me. And so every Saturday, she sends me a workout plan for the next week. And so I don't have to worry about like planning my workout. It's already done. And then a few days ago, she sat down and she's like, okay, well, now this is the nutrition conversation. She created a 16-page nutrition plan for me, which is like, here's what you need to eat before a race. Here's what you need to eat before a run. Here's what you should be eating if you're feeling a little bit more beat down and you need some more recovery time. But that entire process of hiring a coach and finding that right resource for me helped me not focus on all the nitty gritty stuff because she's doing that for me. So it's called outsourcing, right? Everyone's heard that term before. You outsource things. Another good example of that is like if you don't have time to clean your house, maybe you can hire some cleaners. Come in there, simplify your life a little bit. And I know some people might not be in the situation where they can do things like that, but the point of the story is like, what are you focusing too much on that you can do in shorter steps, right? Or whatever that is. So think about that. Think about things that you might be overcomplicating, whether it's a fitness goal, a family goal, professional goal, and see what you can do to, really focus on the essential steps instead of overcomplicating your life. That kind of ties into the next point, which is when you have time to just sit back and reflect, because, maybe you have done the work to simplify your life a little bit and focus on the things that matter most to you. You'll be surprised because it can increase your own creativity and innovation. And what I mean by that is it just gives you space to think. It gives you a chance to think through issues that you might be facing, problem solve them, or it might be able just to give you some ideas and to be creative. I don't know if you're a creative person or not, but think about it. Think about ways that you can do the things that you want to do, right? And so this podcast is another good example of that. I love just having an opportunity to think about these topics and then how they apply to my own life and what lessons that I've learned from each of these that I want to share with my audience. But if I had an overcomplicated life, then the story would be like me when I first started my podcast. I would just try and get content out and not have time to necessarily think about what I was saying. And so that's a very powerful, I think, benefit of simplifying your life and reducing the amount of things that you're doing, is it just gives you a chance to think. We don't have that a lot right now. We don't have the opportunity just to sit down and think. When's the last time you did that without having your phone there or anything like that, any distractions? Unfortunately, our world, because we crave more, we're always trying to keep ourselves busy, I think. In my own experience, that's the case. And you'll be surprised what kind of ideas that you'll have if you just sit down and think. And it might feel weird, but if it feels weird, then I would say like maybe just go for a walk, because going for a walk always stimulates my brain, and I'm sure it would do the same thing for you. But just having that time where you don't have anything scheduled. I met with a therapist not too long ago, and one of the things that she told me was like, hey, you should experiment with not having things planned in your schedule. I'm an avid planner, I would say. I love it when my day's kind of planned out for me. I know exactly what I'm going to be doing at every hour of the day. But to my therapist point, she's like, you know what? You need time just to have unstructured time. Like, I know it sounds weird, but you might have to schedule that in and just have nothing planned. But you need that time to think, and you need that time to just decompress. So all of this focuses on ways that you can more live in the moment, right? And simplifying your life allows that to happen. Like, imagine if you came home from work, instead of shuffling through the fridge and figuring out what you want to cook, you already know what's in there because you meal prepped, then you can go hang out with your kids or talk to your wife, talk to your husband, call a friend. You can do little things that necessarily like help you build your relationships with other people and help you live more in the moment. That's a talent I'm still working on myself, or something I'm trying to work on is that exactly. Is like, what can I take out of my life right now? Kind of the point of the Legos. What can I take out of my life in terms of things I'm trying to accomplish to make my life a little bit more meaningful and to make it more, more, I guess you could say like bright, right? Or just enjoy life more. Because when you're trying to accomplish so many different things, enjoying life is a little bit more difficult. And it sounds weird, but if you've ever experienced burnout, you know what I'm talking about. You just feel so much stress and you feel like, oh, I have to keep doing these, I have to keep myself busy because if I'm not busy, then I'm not accomplishing anything. And that might be true. You might not be accomplishing anything, but at least you're trying to experience life a little bit more. The last thing I want to talk about in terms of just these little points that you can try is setting routines for yourself. This, I think, is a double-edged sword because if you do it wrong and you focus on a routine to the point to where it's like, okay, I wake up at 5 a.m. every day. I go to the gym. I come home. I cold plunge. I have breakfast. I get my day planned. Like if you do that way too much, if you focus on having a set routine where it's like every single 15 minutes is planned of your day, I think that has a negative effect. What I want to talk about with routines is don't overcomplicate it. Instead of things that, instead of prepping your day like that and really focusing on having every single moment of your day scheduled and something that you're doing, what I would say instead is think about the things that you want to get done every day. So for me, I always want to exercise. So I wake up, and for the best way for that to work in my schedule is just to do it first thing in the morning. But exercise is one of them. I always journal, but that's at nighttime or it's in the middle of the day. Doesn't matter. I want to make sure I'm spending time with my wife. And sometimes that's just at random times of the day. But there's certain things I want to do in my day that aren't in the exact schedule, right? So that's what I would say is like come up with a list of things that you want to do and set time to do them every single day. So whether that be an hour, and of course, you're going to get bumps in the road. That's going to happen. You might get a flat tire and you unfortunately not be able to work out while you're going to the gym or whatever the case might be. But the importance of not putting too much emphasis on this, like a routine should be useful rather than harmful to your mental state and your mental being. And again, simplifying your life is going to take time. It's going to take practice. But going back to the goals that you wrote down, think about those goals. If you wrote more than 3, great. But think about those goals and figure out how you can simplify the other areas of your life so you can focus on them more. It's going to take time. It's going to take practice, but you can do it. You can trim away the fat because now you know what's essential and what's unnecessary. So there's this parable I want to share really quickly. It's the modern day parable of the fisherman and the businessman. It's before I share this, I think it's just a good illustration of how we look at the world, right? And how we're trying to keep ourselves busy and focus on growth and achievement and all these things. But let me jump into this real quick. So once in a small coastal village, there was a fisherman who led a simple life. He would fish just enough to feed his family and sell a small amount to the village. In the afternoons, he would play guitar, take naps, and spend time with his family and friends. One day, a businessman on vacation noticed the fisherman's routine and approached him, asking why he didn't spend more time fishing to earn more money. The fisherman asked, "And what would I do with more money?" The businessman eagerly explained that he could buy a bigger boat, hire others to fish for him, and eventually build a fishing empire. He painted a picture of wealth and success. But what would I do then? The fisherman asked. The businessman replied, then you could retire, take naps in the afternoon, play your guitar, and spend time with your family and friends. The fisherman smiled. But isn't that what I'm already doing? I love that story. It's short, but there's a lot to it. The businessman's on vacation, right? He's taking some time off work and he's like, dang, this guy, he could be making way more money if he was out there fishing more. And he could build a huge empire. And he didn't know that the fisherman's life was very fulfilled because he had a very simple life. He'd fish in the morning, get enough food to feed his family, sell some to the village, cover the needs of his family in that sense. And then he would just hang out, play guitar, take some naps, spend time with his family and friends. And the fisherman's life was already full and rich despite not having a lot of material wealth. And what I would say to that is you need to challenge the conventional definition of success. So what do you determine is successful? I think that's another good thing for you to think about as you try and simplify your life is what is success to you? Is it having $1 million? Is it having one of the biggest social media accounts or biggest e-commerce business, whatever goal that you're trying to accomplish? What is success? It's a interesting thought because success for everyone is going to look different. No one's success is the same. Like LeBron James' success isn't going to be the same as this fisherman. The fisherman might not want LeBron James' life, but LeBron James does. So he has goals that he works towards in order to help him become one of the best basketball players in the league. But the fisherman doesn't want that life. He's not going to spend time in the gym doing that. He's got different goals, and he's defined success differently. But the choice to do less is a valid and sometimes braver choice, I would say. It leads to a more intentional and fulfilling life. And again, it's going to take practice for you to apply this for yourself. But another exercise I would suggest you do is to journal. And I've spoken many times on this podcast about why I journal, why I love to journal. It's just an opportunity for me to think about my day, the lessons that I learned throughout the day, some things I wish that went better, some things that went great, or little memories that I had along the way, right? But I'm always documenting this thing. And journaling allows me to go back and look at what my thoughts were 3 months ago, 4 months ago, 5, 6, whatever that is. But I can see where my brain's at. And I can see like if I'm overwhelmed for like 2 weeks, and that kind of seems to be the consistent message in my journal, I can sit back again and be like, okay, well, I seem to be like all over the place right now. What do I need to do to make these changes in my life to have a little bit more fun or have a little bit unstructured time? I want to emphasize that it is so important to have goals. It's so important. If you're not trying to strive to something, I think that also can play into having an unfulfilled life. Having goals sets you up for success, and you're going to have to determine what that looks like for yourself. What is success to you? That's something I want you to focus on, and I want you to think about is what is success? Because once you define that, and once you identify what goals you really want to focus on, then simplify your life and work towards them. Don't focus on trying to be so busy that you miss your kid's soccer game. Don't focus on trying to be so busy that you let your health fall down the spiral. That's a dangerous slope. But what I want you to do is just have a second in your day, whether it's 15 minutes, could be an hour, to take time and write down what went well, what could have gone better, and you'll start to see patterns that you can focus on the essential things and remove the unnecessary complications of your life. It's going to be a challenge. It might be a little exercise that you do maybe on a Sunday before the week starts, but I guarantee you, as you start to do it and you start to really become confident in what you define success to be, and you focus on that, you're going to have a better life. You're going to have a more fulfilled life. You're going to be able to live in the moment more. You're going to set up routines that help you accomplish that, and your stress will ultimately reduce. Getting after it has a lot of meaning behind it. What does getting after it means, right? I ask myself that all the time, because getting after it could look different for everyone. That's the entire point of the podcast too. And then that's why I try and bring on different people who have different experiences in life. But getting after it is getting after the things in life that mean something to you. So success, whatever, goals, whatever. But what can you be doing now to get after the things that matter most? And that's one reason I love this podcast, is because everyone's success is defined differently. And so there's going to be people who might be one of the best leadership counselors, I guess you could say, because I've had some of those guys on the podcast, because they've defined success to them as like helping other people learn how to lead. Or I might have a marathon runner who's like crazy fast on here to share their experience about what getting after it to them means. And it's going to take discipline. It's going to take consistency, but I promise you'll be able to figure out if you put in the work. And so that's really the main things I wanted to cover today, because life should be nice, right? Life should be good. You shouldn't dread your life. And I think the more things that you try and force yourself to do every single day, you might start dreading your life a little bit. You might start not being happy in your situation, or you might start losing joy in the things that you used to love. But it's because you're focused on so many different things. So figure out what's important to you, figure out what success means to you, and get rid of all the other crap. Trim the fat and get after life. And be confident in your own decisions. Once you're confident in your decisions, I can almost guarantee you'll start walking around, maybe feeling a little bit better, right? Feeling better about yourself, about your situation, and being just grateful for the things that you have. Because the scarcity mind makes us think that we need more to be happy. When in reality, sometimes what we need to be happy is less. We need less things to think about. To me, I think that's the reason why that one show on Netflix, I can't remember what it's called, but I think it's called like Declutter or something like that. But this Japanese woman who's a specialist in decluttering and all this would go into like people's homes and remove all the things that they don't find joy in anymore. And ultimately, like when they were done, the people who she would help were always like, oh, this is so much better. Like I have a decluttered space. Like my wardrobe is half the size as it was. I don't have to worry about so many different clothes and different options. Because how many hours do you spend a week trying to think about things like, what am I having for dinner? What am I going to wear to work? What am I going to be doing on X, Y, and Z? But that's the power that simplifying your life has, is you'll be able to realize that you have more than you think, and what you have is what you need. So I appreciate everyone for listening to this podcast. I'm sorry if I didn't make too much sense today. I ran outside and it was like 25 degrees and I'm still cold. And so I'm anyways, but seriously, if anything resonated with you, I'd love it if you'd share it with someone, or just try this out for yourself and tell me your experience. That's the most beneficial thing to me, is if it works for people, I want to hear about it. And I want to know why it worked and how your life's changed because of it. So appreciate you guys listening to this episode. And until next one, keep getting after it, everybody.